Can Apple's AirPods Max really be worth the price?
And what's in store for the Galaxy S21?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Hi there, welcome to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the weekly podcast where we could probably stop sneaking across the state borders actually to catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists to get the big stories behind the tech news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined by Alex Kidman, a man who still hasn't started his Christmas shopping yet, but figures there's time. Now, Alex, the clock is ticking. What's Santa going to be putting on the Kidman family stocking this year?
Well, look, as long as service stations still sell high-quality gifts on Christmas Eve, I'm fine. Kids like getting, random bottles of engine oil, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't go wrong with that. And some Red Bulls. Speaking of random things from a petrol station, we're also welcoming back to the virtual hold studios Leigh Stark from Pickr. Leigh, what do you reckon Alex should be grabbing at the Quickie Mart for his family?
Anything he can, but make sure he pays for it, because the last time I heard he didn't.
Look, my Krusty the Clown outfit was impeccable. I would have got away with it if it wasn't for that meddling kid.
So 2021 is almost upon us, and there's a huge crop of rumours around Samsung's next flagship, the Galaxy S21. We'll take a peek behind the curtain shortly. But first, Apple made waves this week with its one more thing. It's one more really damn expensive, ridiculously expensive thing. There are new AirPods on sale, but unlike any AirPods we've seen before.
But before we listen to the sweet, if expensive, sounds of those AirPods, listeners, make sure you hang around until the end of the show because we're running a listener survey and it's your chance to have your say about what you like and what you don't about Vertical Hold. And to sweeten the deal, you can even win fabulous prizes. So stick around to the end of the show to find out how.
So, Leigh, we had AirPods, we had AirPod Pros, we now have AirPods Max. Is that just referring to the price or the size, or how max are these things?
I mean, I think it's kind of referring to everything about them. So I'm not a fan of the name. I find the name kind of strange because every time I think of an AirPod, I think that it's one of the things you jam in your ear. It's now a brand name, so AirPods are just Apple's approach to sound, whatever. The Max indicates the size. It indicates the driver. More, I think that's one thing else. And yes, it indicates the price because these are not your typical headphones. I mean, most headphones max out. Sorry, use the pun. Max out around the $700 or $800 mark. Even Bang & Olufsen's H9, which are often seen as sort of like the creme de la creme, the super premium noise cancelling, and may not even be the best in class, but still just premium. They kind of max out at about $840. Apple's first over-ear headphones are $899 in Australia, and that outpaces pretty much every brand until you get into audiophile grade stuff. It's a really different approach. These are very similar structurally, I guess, to what's in the AirPods Pro. You know, those are noise cancelling earphones that use the Apple H1 chip. So basically, it's a very small phone chip that processes information in real time to equalize the music and cancel out noise and do all of that stuff adaptive. But this time, there are bigger drivers. There are 40mm drivers, so it's a particularly large can for your ears, and that should make for a better dose of sound. As to whether it's really worth that $900, I don't know yet. I'm not sure because no one's really tested them.
So these are big chunky things.
They're big chunky things. They're probably not dramatically different in size compared to, say, some of the Sony headphones that are out there or some of the Bose ones. You know, when we're talking over ear, we're talking circumaural, which is a technical term to say it sits around the ear, and that's largely what these are. There's some technologies in there. There's foam. There's the special knitting that Apple likes to do on its HomePod and HomePod Mini, so it keeps that sort of style in place. But basically, these are just very large over-the-ear headphones that talk to your phone.
Now, Leigh, one of the details for those kinds of over-ear headphones for active noise cancellation versus buds, be they AirPod Pros or anyone else, is also that sense of isolation, though, isn't it? It's the fact that they're covering your ears as well that adds extra kind of isolation to your listening experience. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, active noise cancellation is essentially just the microphones and the computational audio kind of talking to each other. It's basically, for people who don't understand what active noise cancellation is, it's effectively two sets of microphones basically listening to audio on the inside, listening to audio on the outside, and effectively trying to cancel out the fluff. That's all it does. It can't cancel out everything. It's not sound cancellation, it's noise. So it's bands of noise, things like repeating sounds like traffic sounds or rain or people who aircraft noises is what it was built for. Yep. Noise cancellation is that technology. You know, it can exist in in-ear and around ear and on ear. The around the ear stuff has that isolation going for it. So often we're talking about that extra padding that kind of seals the ear inside of it and helps provide a little bit of a barrier to the outside world. It's not a be all end all. You know, you can still find headphones that are around the ear and often in the audiophile part of the market, which goes beyond that $900, by the way, that don't have noise cancellation, but use that style to provide a semblance of isolation without needing that technology for noise cancellation. But the style that Apple has used here, the circumaural style, certainly provides more isolation than, say, a standard earbud. However, using the AirPods Pro style, this is where it's going to be an interesting test in their approach. AirPods Pro are they're technically an inner earphone. We call that an intraoral earphone. They're not super in your ear. They're just in your ear enough with the regular tips that you use. But you can get dual flange, so they fit in a little bit more. Anyway, because that goes directly in your ear canal or closer to it, there's an argument that says that's just as good, if not better in some cases, than sitting around the ear because you're able to go inside the ear itself and block it out from what's known as the oral cavity, basically your ear hole. So yes, you're right that the padding can actually help. The AirPods Pro, the ones that have been out for 2 years, or almost 2 years, over a year now, those may actually be just as good because they block the ear from the hole itself.
Well, the other aspect here, though, is Apple already owns a headphone company. They own Beats. How do these compare to like the best of what Beats does?
This is a really valid question, and it's one I've been trying to get an answer to for a while now. It should be kind of like the next step for what Beats does. So the best that Beats does is the Beats Studio 3 and the Beats Solo Pro. The Studio 3 came out over 2 years ago at this point. I think it was May 2018. So they are, in most headphones take a year, like over a year to get updated. So those things are now old school. They're still very good, but they're not as good as what's come out in the past year. The Solo Pro, which came out last year, are better noise cancellation, but they're on ear. And to be honest, they kind of break very easily. I've not used mine a lot, and I still have to occasionally feel like I have to kick them to make them work again. They sound great, but the durability is not fantastic. Apple seems to be on this one trying to build its AirPod stuff as a more premium approach to sound. Beats is already pretty premium. You know, it's a fashion brand that does lately relatively decent audio as well, but the AirPods seems to be something else again. I don't know what this will be like. My gut feeling is that having H1 chips on either side, having a larger driver, that should actually get better sound out. It makes me wonder whether Apple is eyeing the Beats brand and saying the premium stuff should come from Apple, because that, you know, keeping people in that Apple side to make them spend lots of money makes a lot of sense, especially from a marketing standpoint. But you might want to keep people on Beats for the fitness side of things, because you've got the Power Beats and the Power Beats Pro. They're fantastic little options for that. And the Solo Pro are kind of like, in many ways, beginners noise cancelling headphones. They're fantastic, but they don't offer the same fit as a big round one. But I don't know. These should be much better than the Studio 3 wireless, because again, they're great headphones, but they're 2 years old by today's standards. And because we've not seen new studio headphones from Beats, and at this point, it feels like that line is dead.
So are these wireless only? Can I plug them into something, or are they going to make me use Bluetooth?
So you're an old school person. I know how much you like your
You
audio gear.
noticed.
So these are primarily wireless. The reason why I say primarily is because you will not be able to use them without power, but you can use them with a wire. You just have to purchase it. So these have a
And what do you
light.
mean use them without power?
Okay, so this is a style of a headphone that, and the Beats Solos are like, or the Solo Pros are like this, whereby they actually have to have charge in order to work. They won't work passively, as far as I understand it. I could
Even
be wrong.
with a cable you're talking about here. Bluetooth,
Yes.
flat
Right.
Bluetooth headphones, they don't do anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
There is a cable that's made for them. It's a really specific cable that Apple's released for it, which is Lightning to 3.5 mm jack, and it's bidirectional. So you
It's a
could.
$500.
It's $50 actually, but yeah, it's an expensive cable. They're not
Wait.
the only.
Wait. This thing's not in the box of a
No, of course not.
$900 set
No.
of headphones.
No, it's $55. I checked the Apple Store yesterday.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm not defending Apple. They're not the only ones that have that sort of problem. To answer your question, these mostly work wirelessly. They're mostly Bluetooth overall. You're not going to typically rely on them to do a cable, but a cable does exist. I will be very curious to know whether they work passively with the cable. My gut feeling is they won't. These seem to be entirely powered.
So do they do anything? Because I know the AirPods Pro do a lot of stuff with spatial audio if you're on a service that supports that kind of thing. Is there any kind of feature like that baked into the AirPods Max?
It's all technically the same. I mean, these are basically very large versions of the AirPods Pro. That's why the price is so kind of confusing to get your head around, because and confusing for me as well, because I keep looking at it going, these have to be pretty impressive to be over twice the price of the AirPods Pro, which even though the technology is very similar. So they do support the spatial audio. Interestingly, Apple's approach to spatial audio, which is very cool to listen to, only works in movies and TV shows with Dolby Atmos. Great for Apple TV, great for the occasional movie or TV show you might rent on your phone or your iPad. However, worth noting that Tidal, I'm the one person in Australia that subscribes, Tidal actually has 360-degree sound from Sony. These actually technically work with it, but they don't process the audio correctly. So if you have Sony headphones and you have Tidal, you can get 360-degree audio, which isn't the same spatial, but provides music mastered in a slightly different way. These technically work with them, but they don't work properly for some reason. So you can't get 360-degree music out of Apple AirPods or AirPods Max or AirPods Pro, that sort of thing, but you can get movies and TV shows for all that's worth. Doesn't work on
What's
Netflix,
that spatial thing mean? What do you mean? What happens?
Do you know in VR how when you move your head in space, the audio changes its position?
So it sounds like it's coming from over there or over there, and as you turn your head around. Yeah.
That's effectively what this is. So if you're watching if you're watching some of the shows on Apple TV or one of the movies that you've rented or bought from iTunes, and you're watching it on your phone, your iPad, or even your Apple TV, effectively, as you move your head, if you're listening on these earphones, it will change the position of the sound and where it's coming from. It's not... It's kind of like emulated Atmos, if that makes sense. It's trying to recreate where the sound should be coming from, but it's doing it from the earphones. Headphones for gaming brands have kind of done this with video games for quite a while. This is just bringing it into the movie space and using the Atmos track for something else.
Is it a novelty, though? Do people really want that when they're watching a movie? Wouldn't it just be distracting?
I don't think people are using it. I don't know if they don't want it, but I don't believe people are actively using it, partially because it's only available on a few platforms. Netflix's technology doesn't seem to relay it at the moment, and it's been out for a few months now. It might just be nascent. It might just be so new that nobody's really touching it. As I said, it exists in music. Tidal does have Atmos-enabled music on, and it works on Apple TV if you've got a Sonos. So if you have a Sonos Arc or you've got an Onkyo with Atmos, you can actually make an Apple TV play Dolby Atmos music, and it's really cool. I got to tell you, Alex, you've got to try listening to Prince in Atmos. The remastering of it is something surreal. But that doesn't work in these headphones. It doesn't work in any headphones, to be honest. So it's a start. To answer your question, Adam, I don't know if anyone is wants it, but I also don't know how many people are using it. My gut feeling is, again, not many. It's a starting sort of thing that feels like it quite hasn't panned out yet, much like the OLED touch bar on Macs. Cool idea, not many people use it.
So you talked about headphones being a fashion statement. I think at that price, to a certain extent, these probably are going to be. There's kind of two things I want to touch on here, though. These are the first AirPods you can get in a variety of colours, and then there's that case. We talk about the case?
The case that looks like a bra.
That's the one.
I don't know about the case. I'm not sure. And I think it's going to be more trouble than it's worth, my gut feeling on that one, because I got a lot of gut feelings about this until I see it in the flesh. Everyone's just working on the same thing. We have promo images, we have a video, and we have a bunch of information, but not a lot else. It comes out next week, so I'm hopeful we'll get to play with it before then. But, whatever. A lot of people don't use the headphone cases, so I'm not really worrying about the headphone case that looks like a bra. Its biggest problem is being able to use it. Some cases are awkward as. There's no way around that. Don't worry about the case. The color thing is weird because the colors are... They match the iPad Air, and they're kind of like this pastel, shiny blue, green, and red, and you've got the white and the black. White headphones are a weird thing in general. I'm always worried I'm going to make so many marks on them.
But white headphones are at least AirPod headphones.
That's true.
AirPods themselves are white. That seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, the black ones make more sense to me because just headphones typically are black, and that's usually what I request my review units in. I'm so conscious wearing white headphones in general. These are a fashion statement, but these are a concerning fashion statement. There was a study, I think it was about 2016, with people wearing Beats headphones, and they found that criminals were more aware of people wearing expensive headphones because they knew that if they robbed someone wearing a Beats headphone, chances were that they would actually also have a really good phone for them to rip off as well. The sort of coverage these headphones have had, as I've said, $900 is actually not overly expensive for headphones. It's just expensive for this type of headphone. So because of the sort of coverage this has, my concern for these being a fashion statement is if you're walking through town wearing a $900 headphone, you make a very attractive target for a criminal who knows the cost of those headphones. And they
knows that you will not hear them sneaking up behind you.
Absolutely. And there's another factor. I mean, these are this is not like your phone. You could take these headphones and pair them with any device where at least your phone is locked to who you are. Now, I'm sure that these probably have Find My iPhone enabled for them, but the reality is that when they can be tethered to anything, they're a Bluetooth headphone. It's really easy to repair a Bluetooth anything to a phone or a tablet. So these could be a fashion statement, but the amount of coverage these have had at $900 makes me fear that these are a very aggressive criminal focused statement. That sounds really wrong, but I think you know what I'm trying to get to in that.
Look, I think if you can afford $900 for a pair of headphones, you can probably afford another $900 for a big, muscly guy called Wolfgang to walk around with you and stop the muggers coming near you.
It's definitely true.
You mentioned as well that these are expensive for their class. What's their competition out there?
The competition for noise-cancelling headphones is pretty aggressive, especially this year. The best headphones we know, and I say the best because I've tested a lot. I know best is subjective. The benchmark right now is from Sony, the WH-1000 XM4. They got updated this year. The previous model, the XM3, which is still around, were just as good. And the
I've got the
XM4s,
XM3s, and I would second this. The XM3s are excellent. Can't speak to the fours.
I can't remember which one I've got. One of them, but they are fantastic.
I remember
the twos.
I remember being at IFA with you when the first XMs were launched, Adam, and I remember us talking about how awesome they were back then. The XM series by Sony have long been regarded as the biggest competitor to Bose, which practically invented this category. The XM4s, which are out now, cost about their RRP is $550, but their street price is actually closer to $350, and they are literally the best in class as far as I'm concerned.
So you could do quadraphonic headphones for the price of one set of AirPods Max if you had 4 ears.
Crazy, yeah. I mean, so Bose
Well,
has.
Wolfgang wants some as well.
Oh, true.
Oh, that's a good point.
And you've still got enough left over for a friend who wants to be next to you. Bose has its Bose 700s, which they've just recently gone back to their quiet comfort name. They're called the Bose Noise Cancelling 700 headphones. It's a terrible name, but at least they explain what they are. They're very good, but they're not as great, as in my opinion, as what Sony offers. And you've also got, as I said, you got the old mainstays from Beats, the Studio 3, which are about $400. As I said, the most expensive noise cancelling headphone that exists is from Bang & Olufsen in the H9, and they are $840. Bang & Olufsen's headphones, their noise cancellation's not always the best in class, but you don't buy them for that. You buy them because B&O has amazing style, good comfort, and what they call a signature sound, which, much like Sony's, is warmer. It accentuates the mid-tones and the bass tones a little bit more than what Bose does, and even what the AirPods do from Apple, which is more balanced. Everything is properly balanced across highs, mids, and lows. So Sony seems to win out for most of us because it feels more like you're listening to a speaker. It's a really lovely sound. I'm expecting
there's a cable in the bag.
And there is a cable in the bag. It's true. There's a cable and an easy-to-use case. Look, they're a very different game. I don't know if these have the ability to compete with headphones that are street price. Like RRP, they're half the price. Street price, they're a third the price. That's where the real test will be, because Sony consistently wins best headphone every year, basically. And for Apple to be that good where they can beat them, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, the scary thing here is, so you mentioned they come out next week. I think it's the 15th of December is their technical on sale date. I was looking into this today. They're already sold out in Australia until mid-January. So somebody's buying them.
Yeah. Look, there are a lot of people who buy headphones without listening to them, which is a really strange approach. I guess in a COVID era...
Are these like retro game collectors that buy them and keep them in the box on a shelf somewhere? Do we have the shrink wrap kind of freaks in this market, or do you mean not listen to them in some other way?
I think they're not listening to them because, well, there's nothing wrong with buying something without knowing what it's like, but we're all reviewers. We know that people should read our reviews so that they at least know what they're buying into. Apple's fan base doesn't always work that way, as we know. Samsung's has people like that as well. So do the gaming companies. It is what it is.
True and fair.
This is a sort of purchase where I think you should read a review of, at least to find out what it is. I know there are people who will buy this without thinking, because let's be frank, the AirPods and AirPods Pro are very good headphones. The AirPods Pro are better than the AirPods, but they're very good. So wanting to have a bigger version of that, there's nothing wrong with that. However, at this sort of price and with this sort of steep competition, frankly, I'd wait for the reviews. I'm anxious to write mine. Don't get me wrong. I am so excited. I know this is going to be one of my last big reviews of the year if I can get it. But I would be reading these reviews before putting down $900 on headphones, because at that sort of money, you have to know what you're buying into.
So usually at this time of year, we're getting ready for a fresh batch of CES rumours. And while CES is going to take place next year, it'll be virtual CES. And instead, the internet is awash with mobile phone rumours, specifically Samsung's next flagship, the Galaxy S21, which, well, we'd usually expect to see a Galaxy S phone kind of around Mobile World Congress date, but Mobile World Congress isn't going to be till mid next year because, well, we all know why. But as a result, it seems as though the Galaxy S21 might be appearing a bit early. Leigh, what's the story here?
Look, it's all leaks at the moment, but basically we're going to see something around mid-January for the S21. Must be bad if you only just bought an S20 a couple of weeks ago. Basically, the S21 will... My understanding is it might arrive in 3 different sizes, but it's now not going to have quite the same sort of camera bump as what we saw in the S20 this year. What have you heard?
Yeah, so on the camera front, it looks like they're sort of sticking to that standard Plus and Ultra, slightly better, slightly more telephoto, and still sticking with space zoom, which just, I hate the name, and it just doesn't work when you get up to that level for a handheld camera.
It's so useless. It doesn't do anything. It gets you closer and then blows up the pixels.
One of the other interesting rumours doing the rounds about this is that Samsung, having mocked Apple for this, is going to follow Apple's lead and drop the charger from the box.
I mean, look, I understand why they do it. Of course, it forces you to buy something else, but it does make the box a little more environmental friendly, marginally so. But it's the sort of thing that people still want, especially if they're buying a new phone. I get why Apple did it, but I can't see it working as well for Samsung.
I was going to say a lot of the things with new phones these days is things like fast charge times and new types of batteries and stuff like that. So you really don't want to be using your old charger because you might not actually be getting the best charging capabilities out of the phone. Yes.
Absolutely, and you've got other things like I know they'll want to push people to wireless charging overall, and there are new wireless charging technologies which will help them. But to get the best sort of speed, as you said, you kind of need to have that premium charging block in the box. It's just super helpful.
Mm.
Well, the other detail that has emerged, and in fact, of course, was announced this week in a way, is the internal brain, which is likely to be the next generation 8 series Qualcomm Snapdragon, the 888. And it's looking like an interesting device. At first, it looked like Samsung wouldn't have it, and then they apparently will. But of course, we've always got the risk here that we might get the Exynos variant here.
Yeah, that's an Exynos 1080 or 1050 or something like that. I heard about this a couple of weeks ago when Samsung was announcing it. The 888 from Qualcomm looks much more interesting in terms of what it can do. And some of the few people I've spoken to about the differences between this year's S20s in both Snapdragon and Exynos were that the camera and the battery life actually perform better on the Qualcomm version than the Exynos, which is unusual. Normally, Australia sees better performance on the Exynos than the Qualcomm, but this year it kind of flipped.
Yeah, usually the reason why Exynos was okay was because the battery life was better, but that didn't seem to be the case. Although Samsung kind of chopped and changed around this because the Z Fold 2 was Snapdragon, and the S20 FE, their last S20 phone, which is of course is still fairly new in phone terms, the 5G model is a Snapdragon. The non 5G model is an Exynos locally. It's kind of weird and confusing.
It's super confusing. I kind of understand why they do it with the Fold. It makes sense to just kind of have one variation of the Fold regardless of where you go, which is a really nice phone, by the way. But I kind of just want them to just stick with the 888 for everyone. It might just be easier to make sure all the reviews line up for a change.
Well, they've got a big challenge on their hands there, and this is not just Samsung. I guess I'm getting a bit more general, because of course Apple's series of processors are just so good, getting better. Qualcomm's sort of in a catch-up position, but they're promising some really big things for the GPU in the 888, in the graphics processing department, including a level of software upgradability that I'm not certain is in the Exynos. So there could be a much bigger difference. There could be a bigger gulf between the different models of the S21s.
There's also the other factor, which is that apparently the S Pen is kind of dead now. Basically, that the Galaxy Note range is dead, and we might see the S21 support the S Pen overall, which is kind of sad to see the Galaxy Note go, because it's such a really cool little device. But it makes more sense if Samsung just wants to have one set of phones and then use the S Pen as an accessory.
Where does that leave them, though, in terms of upgrades? Because the other thing that they always did with the Note, I'm not a big S Pen user, I'll be honest. I don't use it much myself. It's fine. And it's a good, unique selling point for them. But the other thing with the Note, of course, was you got the S phone kind of usually February, March, roughly MWC time. And then you got the Note mid-year, maybe a little bit later if some of them caught fire. And they probably don't want me to mention that anymore.
No,
but,
you should mention that.
But they got 2 bites of the cherry, and the Note could be the refined version. Sometimes it might have a slightly boosted processor or something slightly better with it. Where does that leave them in terms of having that kind of 2 flagship strategy in 2021?
I think there's still a 2 flagship strategy, but I think people are looking at it from a different point of view. Back when they first launched the Galaxy the Fold series, last year, I had this feeling that at one point the Fold would make sense to become a Note variation, because when you think about that device, having it open up to a 7-inch tablet, that's a much more usable size if you wanted to take down notes. They still will have based on the devices we have now, if they go to an S21 and then a foldable in the middle of the year, which is where all the foldables have been launched, they've always been launched in September, they could still do that. They would have their foldable in the middle of the year, and that could still be an S Pen variant for them if they can get that right. And then in the beginning of the year, they'll have the phone for everyone else.
The other big challenge there for them, just really quickly though, is themselves in a way, and is that mid-range market, because I think, and maybe your opinion differs, Lee, but I think the big challenge for that premium phone market, and the S21, and especially like the S21 Ultra, they're not going to be cheap phones. The rumours are that they'll stick to much the same price points that we saw with the S20. So we're talking kind of 1,300 to 21, 2,200, something like that, is what you can get in a mid-range phone in that kind of $500 to $1,000 space is just so darn good. And look, that includes the S20 FE, which I've got to be honest, I initially sort of wrote that thing off and thought, what the heck is Samsung doing? And then I got to use one and thought, actually, this is a really, really good phone. It's probably my easy recommendation for the set. If the S21 wasn't coming in a couple of weeks, it would be, I should say, my easy recommendation for the Samsung phone to buy right now.
So I literally had this question from a reader not 2 days ago on a chat thing. It wasn't you.
I do read your stuff.
You don't read my site, do you? And he asked me what the difference was between all the A variations. He was looking through a Harvey Norman catalog for some reason, and he saw all of them. He said, "What's the difference?" And I said, "To a majority of it is just camera differences, some plastic casing, and they typically don't have water resistance and wireless charging." But you're right; the A series can be super compelling, and it can be really difficult to work out which one makes a lot of sense for a person to actually buy. I still think the S21s or the S series in general, will hold a place for people who desperately want the best of the best, because that's effectively what Samsung targets it on. You know, you get an AMOLED screen in an A series or an FE, but you'll miss out on things like wireless charging, water resistance, and maybe a curve variation. And that sort of stuff does matter to some people. That being said, there is so much strong competition from all the other Android makers out there. And, you know, you look at the likes of Google and Oppo, Realme, there's just so much solid stuff coming out that you should definitely look around.
Well, that just about wraps up another massive episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Lee for joining us for the show.
Thank you, guys. Always welcome to be here.
Now, Lee, this is your moment to tell the world about where they can find your work, yourself on social media, and of course the critical question of the year, your choice for the best biscuit of 2020.
You can find me on pickr.com.au and on Lilo on Twitter. Best biscuit. I kind of am partial to tiny teddies at the moment, but I blame my daughter because she really likes feeding them to me.
Didn't see that one coming. That one's a bit out there.
What were the choices? I'm not going to pick like a Royale or anything. I mean,
I would like to point out, for the purposes of democracy, this was an open vote. Lee had full and free choice.
Right?
We're going to need a recount.
So you can't stop the
while
count.
Adam does that recount, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, at verticalhold.com.au on the web, or on the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And before you go, just a reminder, we're running a listener survey with some great prizes to help make Vertical Hold bigger and better in 2021. The survey is running till the end of the year, with one lucky listener each week winning a fabulous Belkin accessories prize pack with your choice of Apple or Android compatible gear. We'll ship it anywhere within Australia, thanks to our great friends at Belkin. It doesn't matter if you haven't been listening for long or if you don't listen every week, we'd still love to hear from you. To complete the survey, head to verticalhold.com.au/survey. That website again, verticalhold.com.au/survey.
Bonus points if you like tiny teddies.
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Good place to stop on that one.
Yep.
Sorry,
I was just going to add my own hope for these is that I don't do what I did with the AirPods Pro, which is to accidentally put them through the washing machine.
Did you really?
I've written this up. People can go and look at this. They survived, amazingly. This was accidental. I hasten to add. This was not some deliberate wacky science thing.